Well, my anxiety condition developed during my 10-year career in the New Zealand Police. I joined at the tender age of 20 in 1990, and before that I was pretty normal. I was brought up in a large family with 6 other brothers and sisters. My mum was the breadwinner and a hard worker all her life. My dad, not so much. He was not a very nice person. Until his later years, all I remember about him was that he was a physically and verbally violent drunk who never managed to work and provide for his families. He died of lung cancer at the age of 69. He was at home for the last week of his life, so I was able to make my peace with him. I did miss out on great role models though. I had 3 elder brothers whom I looked up to, and they took real good care of me, apart from the times when they would see how long they could hold my head underwater or hang me upside down from the walnut tree at Nanny Chum's house. I am grateful, however, with some of the lessons my dad taught me. He taught me exactly how not to treat your wife and children, and how destructive alcohol abuse, verbal and physical violence can be on a family nucleus. I have 4 beautiful children, and neither their mothers nor I have ever laid a finger on them for any reason whatsoever. And they are the most respectful, loving and well-behaved children you could ever wish for. So thank you, Dad. There will be no argument that a career in the police is extremely dangerous at times and very stressful most of the time. Why and how I developed high anxiety when others around me may have not is not important and is relevant to the healing process, and therefore not even worth discussing. But I did, and that's just the way it is. At a very young age, I was exposed to some horrific scenes and many life-threatening situations. My first posting out of the police college was in a small town called Levin, with a population of about 15,000 people. I was working as a uniformed constable on section. There were 3 officers on each section. On my very first night shift, I was called to a motorcycle accident. The other 2 officers were busy, so I had to attend by myself. When I got there, the scene was sickening. The rider had lost control and crashed into a palm tree. But before he crashed into the tree, he lost his helmet. He was a gang member, and wearing the correct headgear wasn't part of the uniform. He was dead on my arrival. His head had swollen up like a basketball, and picking him up and supporting his head was like trying to pick up a bag full of broken pottery. I had to deal with the whole incident myself. Now I could go on and continue with hundreds of stories like this one, along with others relating to physical attacks, constant threats to my life and family, child abuse and rape cases, homicides and suicides. But you get the picture. It's pretty traumatic and stressful. So how did I deal with these stressful and traumatic events throughout my years in the police? Did I go to counselling and therapy? No. But I should have. Therapy and counselling at the time of a traumatic event is very effective as part of the grieving and healing process. But that's not how we rolled back then. The way I dealt with it was through alcohol and overindulgent behaviour, usually in large groups comprising of other police colleagues. Now this was very effective at masking the symptoms and sensations of anxiety, but it didn't do anything to reduce stress and anxiety levels. So over the years, the anxiety levels just kept creeping up higher and higher. I didn't really know how to completely relax and recharge the batteries. My career in the police was full on. I laughed at any invitations made by the department for professional help. I experienced my very first panic attack 24 years ago. I was a constable at the time and talking in front of a classroom full of children. At the time, I didn't really know what was happening. But I started experiencing these very uncomfortable sensations building up. The more I focused on them, the more powerful they became. My heart began beating out of control, my hands were shaking, I felt dizzy, I was sweating, my throat was dry, and I couldn't talk properly. I was stuttering and my body felt numb. I had this overwhelming urge to escape. I just wanted to get out of the classroom, but I couldn't go. So I just sat there, terrified and embarrassed at the same time. Eventually, all the horrible sensations and thoughts went away, and I was back to normal. I completed my talk without any problems after that and left. I remember thinking, What the hell just happened there? But I didn't have a clue and just shrugged my shoulders and boxed on. As time went by, my anxiety levels crept up and my behaviour became more and more anxious. I never gave my mind and body the time and space to relax, to calm down and bring my anxiety levels back down to normal levels. I didn't know this at the time, of course. At the time, I had no idea of what was going on. As the years went by in the police, I began experiencing the same type of panic attacks as mentioned before, more and more often. I had no idea why they were happening, and they seemed to have a mind of their own. But what I did notice was that the attacks were happening more frequently in social settings. This overwhelming urge to escape was due to the fight or flight or panic response I was experiencing as a panic attack. If I could escape or get out of the situation, I would, and by doing that, my panic immediately retreated. But what I didn't realize at the time was that I was just reinforcing an anxious pattern of behavior. I began to avoid social gatherings where I believed I would experience a panic attack. And when I had to attend any such gatherings, I devised all sorts of coping strategies and techniques that would allow me to escape whenever I was overcome with the uncontrollable urge to run, Forrest, run. There were other times, of course, where I just had to grin and bear it, and it was horrible. But interestingly enough, although the experience was horrible, the panic attack passed pretty quickly, always. Now, instead of learning from these lessons, these insights, I began worrying about the next time I would have a panic attack. I had developed a constant feeling of unease in the back of my mind. I was later to learn that this was the start of anticipatory anxiety. When I had attacks, it was like I was in another world. It didn't seem real and was like I was watching a movie. It's hard to describe the desperation, knowing that this was not right, knowing that this was destroying me, not knowing why this was happening, and feeling angry with myself for escaping or allowing this to happen. As the years went by, my attacks became more and more prevalent, and I had to devise more and more coping tools as the ones that I was using had become redundant as the anxiety levels in my brain crept higher and higher. Being a natural leader and mentor, the roles which I was attracted to when I left the police at the beginning of 2000, were always in a leadership or high-profile capacity. These roles required that I engaged with various businesses, sectors, groups and organisations, as well as communities. Though I coped well when I was acting in my role, attending professional engagements and working under extreme pressure, it was the social component that I found more and more difficult to deal with. And this inability to cope with social gatherings grew worse and worse. My coping strategies were no longer coping with this aspect of my work. This is how I developed my social phobia and agoraphobia, which not only affected my business and professional life, but also trickled over to my personal and social life. It got increasingly difficult to go out and socialise during the mid-2000s. I sabotaged so many amazing opportunities because of my phobias. I left jobs because of them. Just when I was ready to go to the next stage, I would do something stupid to destroy the opportunity. I would hate to think what some of my colleagues must have thought of me. All those times when I failed to turn up to social meetings and gatherings, the times when I left early and the times when I would be excused during a gathering and disappear for long periods, only returning when I had gained control over my panic. During these periods, I was usually locked in a toilet, feeling absolutely helpless and desperate, trying to control a full-on panic attack. During these attacks, I experienced the disturbing sensations such as derealization, or feeling disconnected from reality, depersonalization, racing heart, dry throat, and itchy skin. My behaviour changed so much that people perceived me as arrogant, ignorant, or strange. As a natural leader, I have the ability to communicate and relate to anyone. I can inspire and bring out the best in others. But through this very dark period of my life, this affinity with people was lost. I left a great role with a drug company in 2002 because of my social phobia. Because I didn't know what was going on at the time, I thought the problem was always the job. I sabotaged many great career opportunities during the mid-2000s. Pretty soon I refused to go to social gatherings out of fear of having a panic attack, school events, parent-teacher meetings and cafes where I feared seeing and being confronted by people and having a panic attack. I feared that I would have a panic attack if stopped by people walking down the street, and I did. My tools of coping were no longer working. I felt so desperate, so helpless. I had no idea what was going on. Up until 8 years ago now, I sabotaged everything from sporting, business, music and social opportunities. I lost businesses, which ultimately led to my bankruptcy. I made silly decisions based on poor judgment through fear. This led to the breakup with Nikki, the mother of my 2 beautiful eldest children. Nikki endured the worst times of my life, and perhaps this was the last straw for her. I don't blame her. I had sabotaged so many opportunities and moved my family around so much. She had seen me at my absolute worst. The height of my panic attacks came while I was working as a team leader at Toyota New Zealand during 2008. I started at Toyota New Zealand during the month of March, after moving my family back to Palmerston North from Wellington following the collapse of several businesses, mostly in the biodiesel and alternative fuels sector. I avoided work meetings, social business functions. I kept to myself during lunch breaks, spending most of them in the sick bay. I avoided people as much as I could during the day, which was near on impossible. I spent most of my time locked away in the toilets, waiting for my panic attacks to subside. So, once again, feeling completely helpless, I resigned from Toyota New Zealand after only 9 months. My panic attacks had reached the stage where I found it almost physically impossible to go to work or even leave the house. I guess that was the last straw for Nikki, and our relationship from that point on went from average to worse, resulting in a split towards the end of 2008. This was my lowest point in my life. I was desperate to find a cure for my panic attacks. If I didn't, I would jeopardize the well-being of my 2 precious children. And it was this that ultimately gave me the strength and motivation to finally take action and do whatever it would take to heal myself. I had already gained a huge amount of knowledge and understanding about anxiety conditions. I began researching and studying this area in about 2004. I knew all there was to know about the anatomy of anxiety and the truth behind anxiety conditions. I tried various therapies and programs and systems without success, but was at a loss as to why I couldn't heal myself. My breakthrough came when I realized that it didn't matter what I knew intellectually. If I wasn't willing to throw away all my coping strategies, techniques, safety crutches, if I wasn't willing to stand right in front of my fears, resist all urges to run and let it completely engulf me, I would continue to be trapped in a perpetual cycle of panic. And to be able to do all that, I needed belief and faith, lots of it. I also needed courage, lots more of that. Without belief and faith in myself and a training system, I couldn't possibly muster the required courage to tackle my fears head on. It always felt like for every 5 steps forward I would take, I would end up taking 10 steps backwards. My healing was very rapid from that point on. I saw every anxiety-provoking situation as an opportunity to practice my new attitude. I persevered. I just did it. I followed my system no matter what. I had many setbacks before things began to click, of course, but I had belief and faith in what I was doing, and no matter what was happening, I moved forward with courage. I healed myself of social phobia and agoraphobia, along with the underlying anxiety condition, or GAD, using my system outlined in my building blocks. Today I'm at peace. I love and accept myself exactly the way I am, warts and all. I'm grateful for everything in my life, and I have an amazing vision of the future. I feel truly blessed to have suffered the way I have. I found meaning in my suffering, and I now use my knowledge and experience to help others heal themselves. I can instill belief and courage in others because I have been through it all, and if I can do it, so can anyone else. My journey has proven to be a very powerful tool in helping others. Now, being at peace doesn't mean that I don't have bad days or that things don't go my way, because just like every other human being in existence, things do go wrong. That's what we call life. Being at peace means living in the moment, accepting what is, taking positive action on what I can control, and letting go of that which I can't control, and not being attached to whatever life throws at me. It's a conscious choice that I make. My wonderful, wonderful children, my beautiful wife, and my ability in helping others heal themselves are the greatest gifts that I could have ever wished for. I think I'm the luckiest man alive.